Democratic presidential hopeful Barack Obama sought to distance himself on Tuesday from his former pastor, Jeremiah Wright.
I am outraged by the comments that were made and saddened over the spectacle that we saw yesterday.
This most recent attack on the black church, it is not an attack on Jeremiah Wright. It is an attack on the black church.
The Real News Network senior editor Paul Jay spoke to a member of the Trinity United Church, Professor Dwight Hopkins, from the University of Chicago.
Reverend Hopkins, the airwaves are filled with interviews about Reverend Wright and Senator Obama. And one of the things I'm hearing from the African American community, some people within the church, is that the real issue here is the difference in roles, that Reverend Wright is a prophet, is a minister within a tradition of a church which is sometimes very dramatic in the way it presents things. Senator Obama is a politician, and it's being kind of an issue, a difference of process, but it seems to me the difference is far more substantive. It's really an issue of how you see America. Whether it's sacrilegious to question America's role in the world, to raise the issue that the questions of 9/11 and U.S. foreign policy might be connected with each other. The whole vision of patriotism, that somehow if you're not first and foremost a patriot, you're then some kind of a traitor. And Wright has questioned some of these assumptions. Obama certainly has not. And there really is a difference of substance here. So do you agree with that? And what do you make of that difference?
Well, I think the Obama-Wright controversy really expresses two different perspectives on America. It represents two different professions, vocations of two different men. I think you correctly point out, obviously Senator Obama feels called or moved to run for President of the United States to represent all of America. And that's a political track. And on the other hand, Reverend Wright feels moved or called to represent Christianity and the Christian faith.
But actually what I'm doing is challenging that idea, that in fact there really is different fundamental beliefs between the two men. It's not just a difference of what role they've chosen to play.
Right. Well, I think part of the differences in their perspectives on America, if not the world, is because they come out of different backgrounds. For example, Reverend Wright, lived through what McCarthy period, civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, anti-war movement. His parents go back several generations in Philadelphia in the North. And Senator Obama is more or less new to the political and historical scene in America. His father's an immigrant from Kenya, and he brings that tradition. His mother is a white woman from Kansas, Middle America, so she brings that tradition. Their family background, their educational background, their cultural background, what states they grew up in, who was part of the black community, who was not part of the black community. All those things are the basis for this substantive difference.
How does the congregation then feel about the most recent comments of Senator Obama that really repudiate Wright in a kind of fundamental way, more or less cutting off ties is what we've been told? So is he not really cutting off ties with what Wright stands for? And isn't that what most of the church stands for?
Yeah, I think that initially Senator Obama narrowed his critique to the specific 30-second sound bites that were looped all over the world, and he carefully crafted his response. I think what happened in the recent press conference in North Carolina on the part of Senator Obama is that he's expanding his critique not simply of those sound bites, but he's expanding his critique of his interpretation of the role of a pastor, or the incorrect role of a pastor, and also more, I think Senator Obama is focusing on the issue of patriotism and anti-patriotism.
But what do you think of that? I mean, if you read Obama's foreign policy positions, they don't read very differently than a Clinton and to some extent even a McCain, with some differences with McCain certainly, but the fundamental assumptions of U.S. foreign policy he doesn't question, and Wright certainly does. Is in fact Obama not really a product of the sort of school of thought that Wright and the church represent?
Well, I would say that the school of thought, the prophetic school of thought that Wright represents, would be much more intensely speaking truth to power, whereas obviously Senator Obama feels that he wants to move the country to the center in order to pull together the broadest amount of people, both Democrats, independents, and Republicans. So yeah, there is a difference in how they see America.
Is it also part of an electoral strategy that I personally question? Is Obama a little too concerned with moving that center over to his side, and perhaps not enough concerned with the 40% of America who don't vote at all, who are mostly feel dispossessed and alienated? I mean, would it be a better strategy for him if he spoke more for them?
He does have a somewhat of a populist, radical talk, if you will. I mean, he talks about working people, he talks about the poor, he talks about building a movement from below to take back Washington. He talks about the special interests in the PACs. So there is sort of a mixed bag. There's a radical popular discourse, if you will, and but at the same time, I think there's a pragmatic realization that if their Democratic Party is going to get elected, then they've got to put forth a candidate who can bring back those so-called Reagan Democrats, which means independents and the so-called Obamacans.
And what do you and many of your fellow members of the church feel about Reverend Wright's timing? Why now? What's his objective? Certainly the consequence of it comes off as an attack on Obama. Bill O'Reilly, from Fox News, interesting enough, did not come after Obama yesterday. He went after Wright. I thought he was actually quite measured on how much he critiqued Obama and accused Wright of sabotaging Obama's campaign. But Riley and some of the people on the right are saying that this is really just about Wright's self-promotion, even implying that he makes money out of such center stage. But certainly Obama accused him also of just trying to grab center stage. What do you and members of your church feel about that critique?
Well, I've known Wright since 1984, and I've been attending a Trinity. I think for Wright, it wasn't so much timing and what's the implications. I think he sees himself as representing himself as a pastor, his members of his congregation, and also the quote-unquote the black church tradition. We have to understand, and I think basically what he did was he waited for all the uproar to settle down. A lot of people don't know that he's been constantly receiving death threats, his family. The new pastor, Otis Moss, he and his family have been receiving death threats. There have been bomb threats at Trinity. And so there's a lot of other things I could go into, but I think you get the general picture.
Yeah, but he waited for the uproar to die down so that essentially to start it again. He made 3 speeches in 3 different cities. He's at the National Press Club in Washington, in New York with Bill Moyers on PBS. He's at the NAACP in Detroit. He's waging his own campaign here.
Right, and he also, I think, preached in Dallas Sunday morning. So actually it was 4 events. Yeah, what I was trying to finish up and say is that as him seeing himself under attack as a pastor, seeing his congregation under attack, again, from his perspective, and also seeing the black church prophetic tradition under attack, I know what I know of him and his history, he's not going to be quiet. Now, again, the question is, how does that impact the presidential campaign? But I think, again, I don't think he thinks in terms of running or being appointed or politics in the way that political experts speak about.
Thank you very much, Reverend Hopkins.
Okay, thank you.